In this video, I'm delighted to finally be putting a Smart on the channel. This is a 2007 second generation Smart Fortwo. Let's see whether it lives up to my expectations. So first of all, ignore the number plate. That's a PPO3. This is a personal number plate, so it doesn't relate to the 2007 age of the car. But this is the second generation Smart. I hope to do a video on the first generation at some point, so I'm not going to go into masses of detail here. But in 1998, a joint venture between Smart Watches and Mercedes-Benz, seems unlikely, resulted in a very strange little two-seater city car. And that gently evolved into this version, the improved second generation. The original Smart was just 2.5 meters long. This one has grown by 200 mil, so it's about 2.7 meters long now, which was mostly to try and boost the safety kit. In terms of the structure, you can see all the silver. That's a steel tritium safety cell, they call it. That's all metal, but the bodywork is all plastic. It's all bolt-on panels. So very much like the first generation. This really is an evolution of that, and still remarkably short and quite comically cute. Perhaps not quite as cute as the original. I love the Transformers. Is it going to turn into something else? It would be really funky if it did. This is the Passion version. There was Smart and Pulse, I think, was the original entry level. No, Pure, then Pulse, and then Passion. And they've all got the same sort of structure, the first and second gen. We have a front-mounted radiator, but a rear-mounted 3-cylinder engine. We'll have a look at the engine in a moment. And Smart's own semi-automatic sort of automated manual transmission. We will get to that later as well. Really nice, light and airy. We've got a plastic see-through panel on the roof. These sadly degrade on the second generation. I think the first generation you could have an actual glass roof. So this is a bit of a retrograde step. And just these huge doors. The door takes up most of the length of the car. So we can have a peek inside, which we'll do momentarily. But you can actually access things under the front panel, which I hadn't realised until today. So there you go. You've got your front panel removed. Now you can check your brake fluid level. You can check your coolant with this rear mounted engine and top up your screen wash. So you've got a radiator and an aircon rad hidden down here at the front. And of course very light because it's just plastic. The eagle-eyed will have noticed the clap hand wipers. Again, not quite as cute. It had a really nice bend on the first generation ones. These are a bit smoother in their arc. We can see where they come up to on the side of the windscreen. That's pretty decent, but I think it's probably... No, it's about the same on that side. And the owner has fitted a head-up display because he's quite tall and actually really struggles to see the speedometer. If we come around to the back, we've got a two-stage hatch. So there's stage one, pops up the top hatch. And then the button, I think, just pull that, yeah, just pull these side clips. That's really difficult to do one-handed. Why didn't I just do an automated release on that? And there we go. We've got a more usable boot space, I'm going to say. I'm not going to say I could get a weekly shop in there, but I actually could get a decent amount of shopping. And you'll see the front seats are staggered slightly, so there's a bit of storage behind my seat as well. Tiny, must be the tiniest load cover ever fitted to a car, which can be removed again so you can stack things up. Obviously the passenger seat will go further forward should you wish. You can hold up to 100 kilograms on here, so it's a nice place to just sit and check out the world. And of course we also find under here, once you somewhat awkwardly remove the boot carpet and twist this little thing here, I don't think that's meant to come out, but it has. Here is the engine. And this is not a Smart engine. The original Smarts used a somewhat troublesome 599 and then 699cc 3-cylinder engine. This uses a Mitsubishi engine. It's the Mitsubishi Colt engine, but this one's turbocharged. There's a tiny turbocharger in there. There is a fan-cooled intercooler here at the back as well to try and keep the intake pipe work as short as possible. So this is 1 litre, 83 brake horsepower in turbocharged form. I think it was about 60. Yeah, that was quite a lot of faff to put that back, but there we go, we're done. So now we can fold that up, and down comes the hatch. There we go, we've got the rear wiper up here at the top of the screen, just like the first generation. Let's move inside, and it's an experience in itself. You sit quite high up, so you have to step over your tritium safety cell, In we go. And here we are. It's quite light and airy. There is this roof, but as you can see, it has degraded somewhat. And as it's really hot today, I'm afraid I'm going to keep that covered up. It is just too hot. Got a rev counter and a clock mounted here, an additional hands-free device for some sort of thing. And this is aftermarket as well. It wouldn't normally have had a big panel here. But, you know, tidy little switchgear. We've got heated seats in this Passion model. Thankfully, we have air conditioning, which is nice. Look, there's even a little smart shape for the recirculate option. There's a tiny little glove box over here, full mostly of cables. No underdash storage, but we have got really rather slender door pockets, electric windows, as you'd expect. The owner has fitted extensions to the paddles for the automated transmission. And that is your Smart logo there. And apologies for shorts and knees. I know it causes great distress to the world. Down here, a bit like a Saab, we've got the key to start it here. You have to put it in reverse to get the key out, I think. So it's kind of locked into gear, into neutral, and then it's forward to go up the gearbox, back to come back. And this being a high spec model, we can press this button to put it into an automated mode, but obviously we'll cover that in much more detail going down the road. Speedometer there straight ahead of me, a little bank of warning lights as well. But yeah, it's nice, spacious, plenty of room for my legs, nice somewhere to rest my clutch foot or clutch sandal. And I mean, I wouldn't go for leather. I think leather is a terrible idea. I much prefer a vegan interior, not for vegan reasons, I just don't like leather seats. But you know, it's quite funky in here. The plastics are a little flimsy perhaps, but I have to say, compared to the first generation Smarts, some of the interior plastics in those were really nasty indeed. We appear to have a single cup holder, which is doing a pretty decent job of holding my bottle of water, and you can see sort of triangular themes throughout the interior. But yeah, plenty of space for two people, offset I think just to give you both a bit more shoulder room. But it's not a bad place to sit. I will just say the one complaint. When the Smart first came out, and they came to the UK in around 2000, they were left-hand drive only, but they had really colourful interiors, you know, blue seats, bits of red trim, really nice and colourful. But someone obviously told them that British people are boring, so when we got right-hand drive, it was dull, dull, dull. Black and silver was about as exciting as it got, and that is a real shame. The whole point of this car is to be small and cute and entertaining, and I think something a bit more Fisher-Price in here, colour scheme wise, would be an awful lot better. But of course you're all waiting to see how terrible the gearbox is, so we'd better go for a drive. Right, before I die, let's get the engine started and the aircon going. Oh, there we go, big fan. Oh, gotta have my foot on the brake, put it into neutral. There we go. Yeah, heated controls, nice and simple and effective. Obviously we've got a bit of roaring going on as it catches back up with the temperature in here and tries to cool it down. Let's knock that off slightly. If I put my foot down, it'll only rev to 3,500 revs in neutral. But yeah, I like the sound very much. It hasn't got some of the turbo noises of the Smart Roadster. The Smart Roadster made a fantastic noise. You could get a Brabus version, but it had 100 brake horsepower if you were absolutely crazy. So we go across. We are now into first gear. It's an automated clutch, so as I raise the revs, the clutch engages, and away we go. The suspension, as it needs to be to stop these things falling over, is on the firm side. So driving around a car park like this, not its strong point. But let's do a wiper test. Just pop her into neutral for a minute. Yeah, that's a pleasing performance. There is a triangle, but it's not of doom. There is no dribble, and it's hidden by the mirror. I think that's a good result for driver and passenger alike. We will do a rear wiper test later, because of course we will. So I'm a huge fan of 3-cylinder engines, so I'm always going to love that soundtrack. Just sounds rare, and I really like it. Slowest gear changes ever. You can smooth them out slightly by a bit of rev management. If you manage the throttle and actually lift a bit, it does smooth things out, but they are always going to be very, very slow gear changes. It's just nature of the beast, I'm afraid. But otherwise, you know, it's very peaceful in here, and the ride generally on smooth roads is really pretty good. It just crashes about a bit when it's badly broken up. I think generally this second generation Smart is quite a lot more refined than the first generation, a fair bit smoother, a bit more mature, I guess. And sure, I think the styling has dumbed down a little too much. It's lost some of the cheeky charm of the original, but this is still, you know, a really nice car to drive. We've got electric power steering for God knows why. I drove early Smarts with manual steering. They don't need power assistance, but sadly customers disagreed. Everyone just assumes the steering is going to be lovely and light, and it can feel a bit twitchy because it's so short. It feels a bit twitchy at first, but you do kind of get used to it. This example has done 53,000 miles, and I suspect these Mitsubishi engines are a bit more hardy than the original Smart ones. There are a few well documented issues. Piston rings coming up, I think, was an issue on the early ones. Yeah, otherwise it feels surprisingly normal. You quite rapidly forget just how short this car is. You know, in the first generation I could actually touch the rear window pretty much like that. This one is just a bit further away. The windscreen is a nice distance away as well. I mean, it's still not the safest car to be involved in a smash with, just because it's so tiny. The crumple zones are always going to be slightly compromised. Plunging into the forest, let's pop some lights on. So the next generation Smart, the one that's currently on sale, is actually a joint development with Renault. Bizarrely, Renault, for the first time in many decades, returned to rear engine motoring, and I'd be curious to try one of those as well, but obviously they're very much not in Hubnut territory at the moment. These second generation ones, you know, starting to get there, but certainly the quality is definitely a step up on those first generation ones. I think I drove loads of them. I was absolutely obsessed with the Smarts, and I would go to dealers repeatedly and blag test drives. I think the last one I drove was 2003, a numeric blue convertible, but it always fell down for the same reason. It was always that gearbox, and on a quick test drive that gearbox does nothing but annoy, but I'm sure with time you could actually get used to it. I guess it's because it's not as good as a manual, it's not as quick as a manual, one you're operating yourself, and it's not as smooth as an automatic. You don't get that seamless acceleration that you get with an automatic, because it fully, you know, disengages the clutch and cuts engine power entirely, like you would on a manual gear change. And I believe there are software changes to speed things up if you wish, but it always strikes me they should have done a better job in the first place, really. Now, Smarts were built in an independent factory in France, and my Because French t-shirt, available to buy from our spring store, see description below, is apt. This is effectively a French-built car. But Smart got cold feet. I don't think the sales weren't strong enough to offset the enormous development costs. And when the problem with developing a small car and spending so much on its development is you can't sell the small car for huge money, so profits are always going to be a challenge. And you know, a few years in, the Smart company, drop a gear, get up this hill, was running at a €4 billion loss. So yeah, it wasn't good at all. But fair play to Daimler-Benz, they stuck with it, and like I say, it's now into its third generation. There is a place in the market for a dinky little city car like this. Originally it wasn't called the Smart Fortwo, it was just the Smart, but when they developed the initial 4.4, they thought they'd better call the original one 4.2. As I come to a stop, I don't have to downshift at first, it does it automatically. Yeah, it's a bit, it's not the best gearbox. There's no getting away from it. Generally, when it comes to manual control of an automatic gearbox, I'm not a huge fan. Right, let's give it some beans. Well, that took a while before picking up. Yeah, it actually handles better than you might expect. Yeah, the gearing is quite tall. There's quite a jump between ratios. So it now feels like it's labouring. We don't seem to have any turbo boost going on, even though we're at 2,500 revs. Little interesting trying to keep the engine on the boil. Right, let's give it a full 0 to 60 bean test. Oh, pulsed it up. Right, because I apparently can't be trusted, I'm going to try 0 to 60 dash with the automated mode. So yeah, 60, yeah. It doesn't hang about, but that is frustrating because every gear change loses your turbo boost. So you've got to wait for it to spool up, and then it comes on song, and then you've run out of revs, and it's changing gear, and yeah, very, very irritating. You can downshift at any point? No, we're just going to keep struggling on with the torque, okay? I'm not liking automated mode very much at all. Let's put it back in manual. I frankly can't see the point really in going for the turbo. It'd be very interesting to drive a non-turbo, because I think in a way that would be better, because the power delivery, although less power, would be more linear. You wouldn't have this wait for it, whoosh, oh, it's all over, which this very much has. And I remember being frustrated by that when I drove smart roadsters as well. Again, so close to being an absolutely amazing car. And that was always the problem with the smart, because you probably clicked this video expecting the gearbox to be the talking point, and it is. And I think that ignores that there's a lot of clever engineering here. It's not easy to make a tiny car that meets current impact requirements, or that, you know, can actually be so refined. You expect this car to be out of its depth at high speed, and it just isn't. You can go sailing down a motorway very merrily in one of these, I think. Yeah, as I'm learning the gearbox, I'm getting more and more used to it, but there's no getting away from the fact that under full bore acceleration, it's a frustration. It just isn't quick enough. So there were some other powertrains available. You could have a 0.8 litre turbo diesel, I think it was, and there was also the MHD, which wasn't available in the US and Canada, which is kind of a mild hybrid, and it used a Dynastart unit, rather like my Invacar, which starts the engine and then turns into the alternator. So yeah, it's got a belt drive connection, so the engine starts smoothly. The engine would cut out as soon as you got below 5 miles an hour. So there must have been a separate way of powering the brakes, I guess. And it was designed to save fuel without being an actual hybrid. So quite a clever bit of kit. And there was also a full electric version of this generation of Smart, which of course completely did away with that annoying gearbox. Although of course it also did away with the rather lovely 3-cylinder noises. Well, that was the 2nd generation Smart, and it must be said, we've had to drive about 8 miles back from where I last spoke to the camera inside the car, and I left it in automatic mode, and I must admit, you do quite easily get used to it. Actually, you learn to anticipate the gear changes. You know there's going to be that end of momentum in a way a normal conventional automatic wouldn't, but a manual does, and you just kind of get used to it because you're doing the controlling of the gear change. And I could live with that, I must admit. I could. It actually does a little rev blip on the downshift just to smooth things out, so it's not actually as clumsy as I remember from the 1st generation Smarts. I need to drive a 1st generation one again just to remind myself what they're like, but very likeable package, and I should imagine with the Mitsubishi engine a bit more reliable than the earlier generations as well. And who doesn't love a barking 3-pot? So yeah, surprising refinement in a very small package. That is the Smart Fortwo 2nd generation. So I should say thank you very much for watching. Don't forget you can head to the Hubnut store should you wish to buy lovely merchandise, and I shall see you in a future video. Farewell. Yeah, mild drippage. You see, this is the problem with this up at the top. Look at all this. And then it just pushes it round and then it dribbles back down again. That's not good.